Welcome aboard the Travel DJ Blend podcast. Rest assured, your captain and host Brian B. has logged extensive destination event miles as a headlining private event DJ. So expect to reach new heights each and every episode. Your captain will cover everything from DJ tips and tricks, travel hacks, and entrepreneurial advice. Keep your seat in the upright position while we bring you interviews with industry pros, pop culture commentary, and of course, music recs. The perfect blend. The fasten seatbelt sign is on, as we will likely experience turbulence from knowledge nuggets and truth bombs being dropped regularly. You're going to need your tray table, as taking notes is optimal. Smoking is prohibited on this flight, but your mindset shift will be fire. Your crew will be elevating the conversation and challenging the status quo. We know you have a choice when you fly this high, and we thank you for choosing the Travel DJ Blend podcast. Here's your captain, Brian B. Enjoy your flight.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Travel DJ Blend. I'm Brian B. Thanks for joining me. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, welcome. I like to start every episode by saying that we have 3 areas of focus on this podcast: 301 business strategies, one-of-a-kind music finds, and travel hacks. Today's episode falls in the 301 business strategies bucket. I've entitled this episode Feast or Famine. If you don't know, beyond this podcast, I also lead a coaching group of about 15 different DJs from around the country and one international. And then I do individual business coaching for up to 4 people. And then I'm talking to a ton of DJs regularly. And inevitably, those conversations center around the business. And I always like to ask candidly, how is business? And I don't want surface stuff. I want to know really, how is the business for you? And typically, in most years, there's consistency, especially over the last little bit. 2020, most folks were down because of the lockdowns. 2021, everyone was way up. 2022 seemed to be the same pattern, maybe not as high numbers as 2021, but pretty darn close. 2023 has been interesting. There was a lot of nervousness for a lot of folks before we hit 2023, let's say November, December timeframe, when they're looking at their upcoming year and there wasn't as many confirmed bookings on the calendar leading into the new year. And this affects both single ops and multi-ops. For the single ops, you are the business. You don't make money off of anybody else. So if you aren't working, it generally means you aren't making money. And for the multi-ops, typically their overhead is pretty significant. So they need jobs coming in to sustain that. Plus, being able to pay their people and keep their people, they need to be booking shows. It's generally how the DJ business works. So when it's a slowdown, nervousness creeps in. So my advice at the time was just hold the line and let's see what happens once we get into January and towards the beginning of February. All of the engagements from the holidays will have taken place and we'll have an idea of where things are kind of landing at that point. The worst thing you can do is make rash decisions based on fear or panic. And so as I've circled back with folks, both in the DJ space and in different verticals within the wedding industry, and it was super varied. I had some people say, finally January hit, the inquiries are coming in droves. Then I talked to other companies and the leads still haven't come in. So they're either in feast mode because they're too busy or they're in famine mode because there's not enough work on the books. So I wanted to take a few minutes and just kind of talk through that. What are some of the reasons this is happening potentially? Also what to do about it. And we'll jump into it after a word from one of our sponsors. Hey, private event DJs, are you still planning your clients' events with a Google Doc or a Spotify playlist? If so, let me help you out. Vibo is a music and event planning app for your clients that I've been using for years. Not only has it been a great perk in booking my services, but it's the only tool that has ever been mentioned in client reviews. Vibo saves you time. It syncs your music from your clients' requests in seconds, and it integrates with your music software of choice. Now here's an exclusive offer for my podcast listeners. Save $10 off your first month subscription by entering the promo code DJBrianB when booking your free demo on Vibo's website. This one small change will level up your business. Visit ViboDJ.com, enter the promo code DJBrianB, and book your free demo today. I believe there are three reasons why people are in this limbo of either feast or famine. The first reason is what I call the 2021 new normal. I think we've been lulled into this fantasy that 2021's boom is the norm because we saw it kind of manifest itself once again in 2022. Maybe not to the peak of what 2021 was as far as numbers and gig count, but still up. We're not in 2021 anymore. We don't have a backlog of events that need to be realized, which is actually a good thing because in a lot of cases, people were already paid for those events. And so you're not getting any more money in. You just got to realize the event and have it happen so that you can have more availability later. So we can't use that year as a measuring stick as to how the business is today. So I would suggest look at the data. Most people are going off of a hunch and they're not even looking at the actual data for confirmation of this. Don't go just off of feelings, go off of data as well. Look at the numbers. And when I say look at the data, I'm talking about looking at like 2018 and 2019, more so than 2020 through 2022. See if there's any similarities there in your numbers. And I'm going to bet that you're pretty close to your 2019 numbers, unless there was just some drastic change in your business model, whether that's change in pricing or you brought in more staff or whatever the case may be. The second potential reason, and this is where I believe the majority of the feast or famine situation is coming into play, is this reason here. And that is there is still a lot of financial instability. Everybody was saying a recession was coming last year, meaning that it would hit this year. And while that has kind of tapered off a little bit, the financial uncertainty feels, if you will, are still very real. I mean, interest rates are still climbing. And then just look at the news. I was telling another DJ today, you look at CNN.com and the top of the headline tonight was Disney is going to cut 7,000 jobs across their business. Zoom announced yesterday that they were laying off 15% of their workforce. Twitter has just about killed off all of their workforce, right? Even those companies that are laying off a small percentage of their workforce, they still account for a tremendous amount of jobs. Google laid off 6% of their workforce, which you think, man, that's not a big deal. That's 12,000 jobs. Amazon is cutting 1% of their workforce. You know what that accounts for in jobs? 18,000. Even my wife's company, she works in the finance world. And while they're not cutting jobs, they are shutting down certain offices that are around the world that they have. So all of this leads to instability and ultimately fear that I think a lot of our clients or potential clients are feeling. So how does that impact us? Spoiler, weddings will still happen. However, if you are in the middle of the market, you are susceptible more so than those that play in the budget-friendly or those that play in the more high-end events. Let me explain. If you are in the high end, you're clearly not going to be affected because those folks have the means and resources to weather some of the financial instability that might come. I mean, back to referencing that Disney headline in CNN.com, the actual headline said this: Disney plans to cut 7,000 jobs and reward shareholders. So those that have the financial means to invest in a company like this, they're getting paid while other people are completely losing their livelihood. And I don't mean to laugh at that. That is unfortunately a sad reality that a lot of people are finding themselves in. Now, if your business services the more budget-friendly clientele, the opposite of the high-end market, yes, losing their job is definitely going to affect them, and they may have to pull their investment that they've already placed into securing wedding services. But generally speaking, because they've invested such a small amount, them pulling out isn't going to hurt them as much. But the person who's like the middle management or the director or the VP. So a client in the middle is left with two options because they're not going to go high end all of a sudden. They're either going to go low end and spend very little and look for the cheapest option to minimize risk, or they're going to hold. They're going to wait until things kind of settle, if you will, which means if you service the middle market, you're kind of left holding the bag, or you don't have availability because you've taken whatever you can get and maybe compromised on pricing. And then when these middle market clients come back, you're already booked for something way less than you normally would take because you needed to take the job to pay the bills or whatever the case may be. So we've talked through two reasons so far that could potentially be why we're in this feast or famine. Either this delusion that we're still in 2021 and unrealistic expectations, if you will, for 2023, financial instability. The third reason, potentially, and this has been the buzz for the last couple of weeks, the rapid development of AI. Maybe this isn't impacting the wedding space yet, but it will. It's literally on our doorstep, especially in the DJ space. And so the ability to utilize AI for playlists, creating a DJ mix, that is all possible right now. And is only going to get better. So this begs the question, how does this impact the middle market? Well, for somebody in the middle market that doesn't want to go cheap, can't afford luxe, and still wants an incredible wedding, harnessing AI is a very viable option for them, thereby killing off the middle of the market. Unfortunately, that's where most of the players are. They're in the middle. No one wants to be the cheapest, and most people don't want to be the most expensive. They feel comfortable being kind of in the middle there. And they're most likely the ones that are experiencing this famine, if you will. Not the person who's surprisingly at the low end, and obviously not the person at the high end. Now, this isn't a doom and gloom episode here. What can you do? Well, I'll tell you after a word from another of our sponsors.
Hey DJs, real quick, Brian B here with a tip. One of the hottest DJ music pools right now is Heavy Hits. Are you familiar with it? You need to be. They cover literally every genre, from top 40 to hip hop to Latin to Afro beats and more. Not only that, but their curated playlists and charts, including trending Spotify and TikTok tracks, are second to none. The interface is easy to use, and they have a ton of exclusive edits, which I use on the regular. But you want to know the best part? For my podcast listeners, I have a special promo code that will give you a 30-day trial for $5. Yep, you heard that right, $5. Go to heavyhits.com and enter the promo code BrianB. That's heavyhits.com, and the promo code is BrianB, all one word, no spaces. Take advantage of this right now and up your music game today.
So what are the things that you can do? Well, number one, don't panic. When you panic, you tend to make rash decisions. Well, the pricing isn't working. I need to slash this. I need to slash that. Maybe I need to add a different selling item or service offering. That'll get them in the door. That'll close the booking. And trust me, I get the temptation. When rent is due, when you have a ton of liabilities out there that you need to make sure get covered, you don't want to get behind too much. My encouragement, however, is to make this your line in the sand moment. What do I mean by that? Let this be the time where you go, I am going to lean into what we really are all about. I'll explain that here in a second, because the only other option you have really is to go cheap, slash pricing, pick up what you can grab. And that just adds a layer of confusion in the market when we get past this famine period, where if what I say is correct in the sense that people are fearful of the financial instability, when that rectifies, they look at your brand and like, well, wait a minute, this guy was charging 50% off and now all of a sudden he's back or she's back. What? If you work with planners or venues and they've seen this fluctuation, they don't know what to make of you. And they don't even know if you're really going to be around anyway with that kind of volatility. So let's go back to the line in the sand moment. For me, that means lean in hard to your messaging and don't just say the same thing that everyone else is saying, the buzzwords, the packed dance floors, the personalization, all of the cliche things that blend in with everyone else. Go deeper. Tell stories that people can relate to. And your goal is to attract people who truly resonate with your ethos. This isn't woo-woo. Start to attract your tribe. And once you've defined that differentiator, I know this is going to sound crazy, especially if you're in the middle of the market. I'm going to say separate yourself pricing-wise by going up. Most people are going to want to slash. You need to be going in the other direction. Why? I call this the no-fly zone pricing. You want to be so different, not only in your stories and your ethos of who you are, but separating yourself from a pricing perspective that you don't get compared to the person who is slashing their price and thereby get drugged down. You want to be pushing up. So those are two things right off the bat that I would do. Define who you are, which means begin telling stories of who you are. And then secondly, adjust your pricing up so that way you're not dragged into this abyss with everyone else who's slashing prices to capture scraps. The other thing I would recommend is changing your cash flow position. I've mentioned this on many episodes before, but he or she with the most money wins. And I'm not talking about what you charge, but when you get the money. I hear so many DJs who charge the lowest possible deposit to get them signed and then make the rest of it as attractive as possible by not requiring the balance until like a week before the event, or worse, after the event. Now go back and listen to episode 1 of season 5 about the 75% deposit I require and how I do that. Don't just make the adjustment. My encouragement would be to define your process in a way that allows you to capture a sizable deposit for the work you're doing. And then secondly, secure that balance payment as soon as possible. If you're currently at 30 days, consider 60 days. That one change on the balance can be done today without any justification and will dramatically impact your cash flow position. Having that cash flow, I don't want to say it gives you the upper hand, but it puts you in the driver's seat, whether that's to invest in operations or keep the boat afloat. And if it's tied to work being done, then there's no risk, assuming that your contract is written correctly, for that money to ever have to exchange hands again. It's yours. So that's my thoughts for those of you that are feeling the famine right now. And if you're feeling the feast, kudos to you. Whether you're on the very low end, securing a lot of that business, which is risky because they may pull out and it's very low risk for them to do so, or if you're on the high end because you've been able to define your differentiators and tell stories that allow your potential clients to resonate with your ethos, stay on it. Continue to push to keep you feasting. But for those that are feeling the famine, boy, do I feel for you. If you're in that place where the phone isn't ringing, I want to tell you, this is your moment. This is your line in the sand. Don't waste the opportunity and let it pass you by. Hang your hat on the things that you do that nobody else can do. When you do that, it allows you to charge a premium because only you see the world as you do. So pick a path, either low or high, and go after it. Trust me when I tell you, you want no part of the middle. That's what I got for you today. On our bonus episode that accompanies this public episode, you can get it on our premium podcast tab of my website, thetraveldjblend.com. I'm going to be talking about wedding industry lawsuits. There's a lot of them out there right now. And my thoughts on public perception versus reality. It's a good one. And with that, I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening. You can find this podcast on multiple platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you have a topic you'd like covered, DM us on Instagram at @TheTravelDJBlend. We'd appreciate you sharing the love with a comment or a share on our social media posts for this episode. And if you are really digging the content, help us with the algorithms by leaving a review on any of the platforms we just mentioned. Until our next time together, this is the Travel DJ Blend Podcast.